I wanted to, not just make better places, but make places that make us better.
Everyone deserves a home that brings them joy. Maybe you're more of a host than a recluse, or a gardener, or an athlete. Everyone's personality should be reflected in their home. So we wanted to speak to some of the most inspiring people we know about how their lives and their passions are reflected in the spaces that they inhabit.
Kasey Klimes is a designer, a researcher, and a technologist. He's worked in city planning around Europe, and he's shaped augmented reality projects at Google. He's brewed coffee in Copenhagen. He's been a connector of local creators around Brooklyn. His most recent project leverages AI to advance human learning. What's up, buddy? Thanks for doing this with us.
Thank you. This was fun.
I guess to zoom back, what did home look like when you were growing up?
Well, there was a few. So I was an Air Force military brat. I did the math recently. I've lived in about a dozen cities, and I've on average moved every 3 years since I was born. So home was not always one place, but I'd like to think that made me somewhat adaptable. Has ended up being a situation for me in which I put effort into building community. I've never felt particularly rooted, although I now live in Brooklyn, and I would like to stay here, which is maybe the first time I've felt, or at least not felt like I had an itch to leave. Like, this is a really special place, and I love it, and I put a lot of energy into building community here.
I was curious if you felt like that ability to bring community together thrives in a city or is harder in cities?
Jeff, as you know, I have a background in city planning and urban design, and one of the things I noticed in the research is there's some brilliant work by a guy named Appleyard out of Berkeley some decades ago, but he basically looked at different streets that were otherwise comparable, but had different amounts of traffic moving through them. And the streets that had more traffic had fewer social relationships across the street than the ones that had less traffic. And so the way we design our environments matters a lot. Fortunately, I think a place like Brooklyn here is really well designed for relationships. I mean, we know a lot of our neighbors, and a lot of our friends live within, a 5-minute walk. So that to me is really special.
What got you really excited about urban strategy and city planning to begin with?
I grew up, kind of with this very literally childlike experience of comparative urbanism. Like, in this city, we get to take the train and go to the park, and in this city, the park is too far away, and we have to drive everywhere. And, I think that to some degree led to a really keen understanding that our environments shape our lived experience, they shape our lifestyles, they shape our social relationships, they shape our health. They even shape kind of like regional personalities and like more subtle things in ways that I think are really fascinating. But I wanted to, not just make better places, but make places that make us better. And so I found my way into urban design and city planning with some of that motivation.
I want to kind of transition over to some of the work that you're doing now. You actually have this really incredible quote on your website that I thought was worth quoting, because I think it's actually a good transition from what you're saying now to kind of the work that you're working on today. You say our environments shape us. We are the first species on Earth with the power to shape our environment. So what do we want to become? What does that mean to you, and kind of like how has that informed the projects that you're working on today?
Yeah, it's funny. I've had that quote on my website for the last 15 years, and I keep thinking I should update it or something, but it continues to hold true for all of my work, so I've left it. The ways that we shape are certainly like the built environment, like we talked about, but also our technology and our economy, our public policy. All of these different things have interaction effects. Especially when we introduce them at scale. I used to work at Google. I had to think about the fact that the tools I was designing would be in the hands of 1 billion people, like literally 1 billion people around the world, which is a little bit daunting, but it made me think really deeply about not just, what's the relationship between human and computer, but also that interaction's effect with society at large. And so I try to keep that in mind because we have seen the way that things can kind of spiral out of control in negative ways when we don't think about that. So it's not easy to do. I think, we have limited purview, limited brain power. I certainly do. But to the best of our ability, to the degree we can think about those nth order effects and how they then end up shaping us and our experience at a larger scale, I've found that to be a really valuable kind of guiding light in the design process, no matter what field I'm in.
You talked about limited brain power. Let's talk about our little brain power. Sir, I know you've been working in AI. Can you tell us about the project you're working on now?
Yeah, so I'm currently building a tool called Campus. And it is, at a high level, it's designed to expand human agency. And what that looks like in practice, at least for Campus, is a tool designed to help you achieve big, ambitious projects. So if you want to change careers, or you want to, you've never done woodworking, but you want to build a mid-century modern oak coffee table with Sashimoto joinery, whatever the specific weird thing that you're excited about, you can sort of have a conversation up front about the goals and constraints of your project, your situation, and then we create a full-scale project guide with multimedia, steps along the way, YouTube videos, kind of a choose-your-own-adventure process for that project. And so we use a lot of AI to make it happen. And it's a really exciting time in technology right now. Like the things that are possible right now that were not possible even 3 years ago is huge. And so I believe we can use technology to make life better for ourselves. And so I intend to push it in that direction as much as I can. So that's what I'm doing right now.
How can someone use Campus to enhance their homes?
Can you think of a case study?
Absolutely. So, for example, we had one user in Minnesota who wanted to do her own landscaping. She had purchased a property. She wanted to do her own landscaping. She had never done landscaping before. But it was very important to her to use only native plants. And she wanted to do it herself. And Minnesota at that time was in a drought. So she had to think about all these different things. Well, there's no off-the-shelf guide for how to do your own landscaping in northern Minnesota during a drought with native plants, right? Like that doesn't exist. So she was able to create a project guide specific to those goals using Campus, and to achieve those outcomes. I think she also, she's a fun one. She was also using it to build a finished sauna in her yard, and I haven't heard the latest on that, but I'll let you know.
Somehow tie the sauna into the biophilic design of the landscape.
That wouldn't surprise me. Yeah, exactly.
Similar question: Are there ways you can think of that architects or interior designers can use Campus?
Perhaps. It's an interesting question. I haven't thought about that one too much. Architecture, as you know, is really a bunch of subdomains bundled together. There's the construction aspect of it, there's the structural design, there's landscape architecture, there's interior architecture, et cetera, and if you're an architect who's moving into a new kind of subdomain of architecture and it's new to you and you're taking on something that's a little bit outside your comfort zone, I would hope that Campus could serve that need as well.
Awesome. Well, yeah, I'm very excited to try it out. So, as we talk about all this stuff and we talk about how this all applies to the homes that we inhabit, as someone who's always researching and future thinking, I was curious if there are ways that you imagine the homes that we inhabit changing on a radical level.
I hope so. I hope we make them cheaper to build, for starters. I think we need a lot more homes. So at a macro scale, that's where I would like to see progress happen. I think most of that is policy changes more than technology, but perhaps technology can play a role as well. So my own career, especially as it relates to environmental design has been really informed by the work of Christopher Alexander, who was a mathematician turned architect and wrote some of his most impactful work, at least in the 1970s. And one of the books that he wrote was called A Pattern Language, and it is 253 kind of reusable and modular design patterns for common environmental design problems. So for example, one of them that I'm really fond of is, he says basically that in a home, every room should have natural light on at least two sides. So when you have a room that has only light on one side, you get this sort of harsh one-dimensional light that makes the room less comfortable. And I think it's, what's interesting about his work is that it was very controversial among architects, because effectively what he was saying is we don't need architects, because most of the buildings in human history were built without architects, and architects have done, in his view, bad things. And so there's a very everyman sort of guidebook ethos to the whole thing that as a former DIY kid I appreciate. And what's interesting, so a lot of the architects really didn't like this, but the computer programmers got a hold of it, and they saw something in his information architecture that they could use, and ended up developing what's now known as object-oriented programming. Basically, the computer languages that power your iPhone were in part inspired by this book by an architect. Now, that's all to say, we could take that further, and we could bring it back into environmental design too. There are these patterns that have been proven to be effective across cultures and across time for designing spaces that make us feel alive, and I'm kind of borrowing his terms. And I think we could bring that back in algorithmic design of homes and spaces and buildings in a way that hopefully scales up the impact. And so I would love to see that happen, hopefully in my lifetime. And there's a few projects kind of in that realm right now, so I'm eager to see where that goes. But hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, it sure does, in a profound and beautiful way. I also just like that he's just very punk rock. He's very big rock, yes. Ian Mackay of architecture, right?
That's
So I thought it'd be fun to throw a few home design amenities that are available right now that integrate some of these technologies on a very direct level, and just kind of get your initial take on them.
All right.
Let's do it. So have you seen anything about these predictive appliances, like lighting that changes with the weather?
Wow. I think Lori's mentioned this, but I haven't seen it firsthand.
Yeah, they're really beautiful in that they're actually supposed to replicate the time of day and mimic the circadian rhythm. Now, the technology, obviously, as it grows, is starting to incorporate with some heating and cooling and some automatic shades and all that kind of stuff to make the interior environment feel, a lot more natural.
So that's cool.
Yeah, I think that's a cool one. We're excited to be playing with. This one I was curious to see where your gut reaction was, but we've started to see trends in all kinds of appliances that have biometric health sensors. So whether that's a mirror that can tell you you're dehydrated, or toilets that can tell you all kinds of things, or beds that can tell you about your sleep and your body position. What's your gut reaction to those kind of technologies?
So on one hand, these are incredible technologies, right? If they can reduce energy needs, that's amazing. If they can help us be healthier, that's amazing. This is a class of problems in which we understand them relatively well. The issue can be quantified. There's a friction to overcome. Technology is so good at this. And I would love this stuff. My concern ends up being what happens with that data. Where does it go? Who's buying and selling it? Is my biometric data going to be sold to an insurance company to jack up my health insurance if I have? This is the world we're in, and so I'm always very keen to distinguish between what is technology and what is the economic incentives that's animating that technology. These are fused, obviously, but they're also distinct phenomena. Like, we could have versions of everything you just described where the data sits on a local server in our homes. That's not really what's being built, and it's not what's being built for a reason. I think it's worth being skeptical about technology in addition to being optimistic about it. I think we should embrace technology, but we should also make sure that it serves us in the long term.
All right, let's pivot. I just got a few more for you. Obviously, we can see your lovely background, but what does home mean to you? What does home feel like?
So our home, we live in a relatively small multifamily building in Brooklyn, and it was renovated to be passive house some years before we moved in. So completely gutted and made passive house, which for anyone listening, passive house is a German philosophy of design that's very centered on energy efficiency, triple pane windows, and we have very thick walls. And these things are amazing, because of energy efficiency, but also our apartment's actually really quiet because of this stuff.
A rarity in New York City.
Yeah, I'm very, very grateful for it. So it's kind of best of both worlds in that we have, the old world charm of building this old, and also some of the, things that we have truly advanced on in architecture have been integrated as well. And so, yeah, it's a very comfortable home. We have light on two sides of every room. It's actually funny when we were looking at this place, the person who was in here previously had a copy of Christopher Alexander's Pattern Language sitting on the bed. I was like, "Yep, this is this is it for us."
Serendipitous,
so
yeah.
Signed that contract. As much as I'm very gung-ho on technology, there's not a ton of technology in our home. I think of technology as something that overcomes friction, but I like some friction in my home. As you know, Jeff, I love coffee, and I make coffee every day. I don't have a coffee machine. It would be easier for me to have a coffee machine. The coffee would be just as good. It's not about how good the coffee is. But instead I just make it by hand every single day, like I've done for the last 20 years. And it's part of my ritual. And so I think a home that supports ritual is important to me just as much as, a home that is optimized and efficient in every way.
Awesome. And I will say, you have made me some of the best cups of coffee I've ever had in my life. So
those are kind words. Thank you.
Whether the ritual plays into my bias or not, I'm not sure. But okay, just a few last quick ones for you. Is there something in your home nowadays that is completely unique to you?
Well, I have a lot of books. You only see a few of the books on this wall. There's more on this wall, and over here. This is my home office. I spend most of my time here, so this room kind of maybe ends up reflecting me, regardless of whether it's intentional or not. And I try really hard to not make my home feel like the home of a guy that moves a lot. But for example, the shelving you see right there is string shelving. I believe it's a Finnish designed system that is very modular. There's all these different kind of parts, but it comes apart and it packs down to almost nothing. And then when you have a new space with a wall of a different scale, what have you, it can be rearranged in any number of different ways. I'm a really big fan of modular stuff, both as a technologist and in environmental design, because I just think the world is idiosyncratic, and so the more that we can make things that adapt, the better in general. I mean, I have my old cameras and a lot of the technology in my home is very old. It's all old film cameras, and I used to have a recording studio. It was all old analog stuff. So while I'm, off building world-scale augmented reality at work, when I go home, it's all ancient technology.
Perfect. It makes sense. Good balance.
I'm quite content.
I think there could not be a better way to kind of put a period on it than saying you're quite content in the home you're in today. Thank you so much, buddy. This has been really fun. Always inspired by listening to your brilliant brain work.
Likewise.
As we discuss in these conversations, we really believe that the best home designs are the ones that are the most personal. So if you're looking to pair your personality, your passions, and your lifestyle with home design amenities for a future project, jump over to our website or check out our card game, Personal Space.